The night was deep, and the winding mountain road beckoned with an almost hypnotic allure, its curves and dips cloaked in mystery and moonlit secrets. As Emory Langford drove away from the suffocating neon glare of the city, every heartbeat seemed to echo with a forgotten promise, a call from the wilderness that whispered of destiny and ancient lore. The road, coiled like a slithering serpent through towering pines and rugged cliffs, held an undeniable magnetism, pulling her into a world where every shadow and rustle of leaves promised a story yet untold. In the stillness of that cool, crisp air, the city's relentless pace, its deadlines, its sterile concrete corridors, its cacophony of honking horns, fell away like a distant memory. Instead, the quiet majesty of nature embraced her, filling the void left behind with a sensation that was both liberating and unsettling. With each turn, the landscape transformed. Dense forests of emerald green gave way to a tapestry of wild, untamed land, where the scent of pine and damp earth mingled with hints of something far older than time itself. As she pressed forward, Emory's thoughts wandered back to a letter, its script delicate yet resolute. A final gift from her grandmother, a woman as enigmatic as the forest that now lay before her. The letter had been a cryptic message, etched in elegant strokes that spoke of legacy, caution, and a truth too profound to ignore. Emory, the cabin is yours now. There are things you need to remember, things the city has made you forget. Be careful who you trust. Some debts never go unpaid. Those words had resonated with a strange familiarity, stirring an inner conflict that blended hope with a foreboding sense of loss. Arriving at the secluded cabin, a relic seemingly frozen in time and overtaken by nature's relentless grasp, Emory felt as though she had stepped into a living memory. The old structure, its ivy-clad walls and weathered wooden beams hinting at countless untold stories, exuded an aura of quiet isolation. A solitary lantern, its weak glow fighting back the darkness, hung by the door, a silent sentinel welcoming, her back to a past she had long tried to escape. Inside, the cabin was a repository of forgotten moments. Dusty shelves lined with aged books, the lingering aroma of faded lavender, and the unmistakable scent of ancient wood. Every creak of the floorboards and whisper of the wind seemed laden with memories, urging her to confront truths that had been buried deep within her soul. Yet, even as the cabin embraced her, an undercurrent of unease ran through the stillness, a subtle reminder that some forces in this place were both watchful and inexplicable. Outside, the world had grown strangely quiet, as if nature itself had paused in anticipation. The forest, vast and impenetrable, held its breath. In that pregnant silence, every rustle, every distant murmur, was magnified into a symphony of suspense. It was in these moments that Emory's instincts screamed, of unseen eyes watching from the darkness, of a presence lingering just beyond the reach of the lantern's feeble light. The isolation was palpable, a delicate balance of solitude and the stirring of something primordial, an ancient call that beckoned from the depths of the woods. As the chill of the night deepened, the boundaries between past and present blurred. The cabin, with its crumbling facade and silent echoes, was not merely a shelter, but a portal to another time, a time when legends walked the earth, and the forces of fate wove intricate destinies. The interplay of shadow and light created a canvas upon which every whispered memory, every hidden secret, was painted with exquisite detail. In that moment, the wilderness was both a sanctuary and a battleground for the heart's most profound struggles. Emory stood at the threshold of this enigmatic domain, her inner turmoil mirrored by the stark contrast between the oppressive darkness of the forest and the fragile yet defiant glow of hope emanating from within. Every instinct told her that she was being drawn into a confrontation, not only with the remnants of a forgotten past, but with the very essence of destiny itself. The solitude of this place was deceptive, a calm facade that masked the storm of emotions and the raw, unyielding power that simmered beneath the surface. In that cinematic pause, as the wind whispered through the trees and the first stars began to pierce the velvet sky, Emory realized that her journey had only just begun. The call of the wild was irresistible, a lure steeped in mystery, isolation, and the promise of rebirth. It was a call that challenged her to embrace not only the beauty of the unknown, but also the darkness that lay within. The delicate balance of nature and fate, of love and longing, was about to unravel in ways she could scarcely imagine. This was the moment when the past and present collided, a fragile, luminous instant suspended in time. And as Emory took her first tentative steps deeper into the night, the road ahead unfurled like a tapestry of dreams and nightmares, inviting her to discover the untold secrets of her heritage, the true meaning of destiny, and the powerful, inexorable force that bound her to the wild. The cabin, the forest, and the night itself whispered of a future where every heartbeat was a defiant promise, every shadow a keeper of ancient lore, and every breath a step toward an unimaginable destiny. In this silent, evocative realm, where isolation met the fierce call of fate, Emory's journey was set in motion, a journey that would forever alter the course of her life, weaving her into the fabric of a myth that was as old as the stars and as relentless as the pull of the moon. Emory Langford left behind the cacophony of the city with a mix of reluctance and determination, steering her aging sedan onto a winding, mountain road that seemed to whisper secrets of its own. The asphalt, worn smooth by time yet still jagged with imperfections, curved like a serpent through the dense, ancient forest. Gone were the neon lights and blaring horns, a stark contrast to the wild, untamed beauty that now surrounded her. As she drove deeper into the heart of nature, the city's sterile rhythms faded into a distant memory, replaced by the rhythmic symphony of rustling leaves and the soft murmur of a hidden stream. The mountain road itself was a character in this unfolding tale, its dark, winding path beckoning her toward an unknown destiny. Every twist and turn revealed glimpses of the landscape's raw majesty. Towering pines reaching skyward, their branches intertwining like nature's own cathedral, and rugged cliffs that loomed in silent grandeur. The cool night air, heavy with the scent of pine and damp earth, brushed against her skin, carrying with it a promise of secrets waiting to be discovered. Resting on the passenger seat was a single envelope, a handwritten letter that had arrived. Unexpectedly, its edges frayed as if bearing the weight of countless untold stories. Emory's grandmother, a woman whose life had been as enigmatic as the forest itself, had penned the message in a precise, elegant hand. The letter read, "Emory, the cabin is yours now. There are things you need to remember, things the city has made you forget. Be careful who you trust. Some debts never go unpaid." Those words, though few, were charged with an urgency that resonated deep within her, stirring memories of a past filled with both wonder and warning. With each passing mile, the city's artificial comforts became a fading echo, replaced by a palpable tension that filled the cabin of her car. The landscape shifted gradually from the ordered chaos of urban sprawl to the untamed wilderness, where every breath of wind and every play of light on the forest floor held a hint of mystery. As Emory neared her destination, the terrain grew. More rugged, the road narrower and less forgiving, as though it were deliberately guiding her toward a place steeped in forgotten history. At last, the old cabin emerged from the shroud of trees, a solitary structure clinging precariously to the edge of time. Its weathered exterior, draped in creeping ivy and scarred by years of relentless seasons, exuded an aura of quiet isolation. The wooden siding, darkened by the passage of time, creaked under the gentle caress of the wind, as if whispering stories of long-lost days and untold tragedies. A single lantern, barely flickering against the encroaching dusk, hung by the door like a lone sentinel, its weak light casting elongated shadows on the overgrown path leading to the entrance. Stepping out of the car, Emory paused to absorb the haunting details of her inheritance. The cabin's door, heavy with the weight of history, groaned in protest as she pushed it open. Inside, the air was thick with the mingled aromas of aged wood, faded lavender, and something far more elusive, a scent that hinted at secrets, memories, and perhaps even danger. The interior was dimly lit, with beams of moonlight filtering through grimy windows, illuminating motes of dust that danced like tiny specters in the silence. Every surface seemed to hold the residue of lives once lived: faded photographs, brittle letters, and mementos that spoke of a time when the world was both simpler and infinitely more mysterious. Emory's fingers traced the worn edges of a wooden table, its surface marred by the gentle but persistent caress of time. The soft murmur of the wind outside was joined by a deeper, almost imperceptible hum of history, a murmur that seemed to suggest that the cabin was more than just a relic, but a living repository of the past. As she wandered further into the room, her eyes were drawn to a grand, dusty bookshelf, its shelves sagging under the weight of ancient tomes and forgotten lore. There, amidst the relics of a bygone era, lay a thick, leather-bound tome with pages, yellowed and edges curled, a silent testament to the knowledge and secrets her grandmother had guarded so fiercely. The letter had been more than a simple inheritance. It was a key to unlocking a legacy that had been hidden beneath layers of time and neglect. Outside, the forest seemed to lean in closer, its dark silhouettes watching with silent anticipation. The boundary between the known and the unknown blurred as Emory's pulse quickened. The cabin, with all its eerie charm and haunting beauty, promised answers, and perhaps more questions than she could imagine. In that moment, standing alone in a place where every creak of the floor and whisper of the wind held meaning, she felt both the weight of her past and the pull of an inevitable destiny. Emory took a deep breath, the cool air filling her lungs, with a blend of trepidation and hope. The legacy of her grandmother, the mysterious letter, and the haunting allure of the cabin coalesced into a single, undeniable truth. She was meant to be here. In the silence of that ancient dwelling, surrounded by the murmurs of the past and the promise of secrets waiting to be unraveled, she braced herself for the journey ahead, a journey that would force her to confront the mysteries of her heritage and embrace a destiny as old as the forest itself. Emory stepped into the dim interior of the cabin, and immediately a wave of scents assaulted her senses, a rich tapestry of aged wood intermingled with the delicate, almost melancholic aroma of faded lavender. There was, however, an underlying note that defied easy description, something wilder and untamed that hinted at the mysteries buried within these walls. Each inhalation seemed to draw her deeper into a past shrouded in secrets, and as she moved further inside, her every step echoed softly against the creaking wooden floorboards, as if the very structure was whispering long-forgotten tales. The hallway was narrow and steeped in a haunting stillness. Moonlight, filtered through grimy, time-worn windows, cast long, quivering shadows that danced slowly across the faded wallpaper and splintered furniture. Emory paused, her heart quickening as she sensed a subtle, almost imperceptible presence lurking at the edges of her vision, a silent witness to her arrival. It was as if the cabin itself was alive, silently observing her with a quiet promise of secrets yet to be revealed. She could almost hear the murmur of voices, soft and indistinct, echoing through the hallways, a gentle susurration that mingled with the creaks and groans of the old building. Every sound, no matter how faint, seemed charged with emotion, as though the walls were imbued with the memories of those who had once walked these floors. In her mind, a quiet inner monologue began to unfold. Is this the home my grandmother spoke of? A place where every mark, every faded detail, holds a story waiting to be told? The thought sent a shiver down her spine, not out of fear, but from the realization that she was stepping into a living history, a realm where the past and the present intertwined in an intricate dance. Her eyes wandered to the walls, where subtle marks and scratches hinted at struggles long past. There were deep gouges in the wooden beams, scratches that looked almost deliberate, as if carved by a force or hand that had a story of its own to share. Each mark was a silent testament to events that had left their imprint on this venerable structure, an archive of hidden memories. The sight stirred a mixture of curiosity and apprehension within her, a yearning to unravel the layers of history that the cabin so carefully guarded. Moving further into the room, Emory's gaze was drawn to a time-worn portrait that hung askew on the wall, a faded image of a stern woman with eyes that seemed to follow her every move. The resemblance to her grandmother was undeniable, and for a brief moment, she felt as though she was being beckoned to remember a past she had long tried to forget. The interplay of light and shadow around the portrait lent it an almost spectral quality, reinforcing the sense that nothing in this place was as it seemed. Outside, the wind picked up, sending a cascade of loose leaves skittering across the wooden floor. With each gust, the eerie silence was punctuated by nature's own subtle symphony, a reminder that the outside world was both separate from and yet intrinsically linked to this sanctuary of secrets. Emory could not shake the feeling that every sound, every whisper of the wind, carried with it an unspoken warning. "You're not alone," her instincts murmured, blending seamlessly with the hushed echoes of the past. In the quiet recesses of the cabin, she found a small study, a secluded nook lined with ancient tomes and scattered papers. Here, the air was even thicker with the scent of old paper and the faint trace of incense, as though some ritual had once been performed within these walls. Emory's eyes landed on a peculiar, almost out-of-place detail, a series of delicate symbols etched into the worn surface of a wooden desk. They were unlike any markings she had seen before, intricate, designs that seemed to pulse with an inner light, as if holding the key to long-buried secrets. The symbols exuded a quiet intensity, compelling her to linger in that moment of suspended time. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together the fragments of her thoughts. What do these marks mean? Who carved them, and for what purpose? The questions swirled like a vortex in her consciousness, each one deepening the mystery that enveloped her. A sense of foreboding mingled with anticipation, as if the very air around her was charged with the promise of revelations yet to come. Emory's inner voice grew louder, resonating with both wonder and a touch of trepidation. She felt as though she had crossed an invisible threshold, leaving behind a world of predictable routines for one where every detail mattered. A world where every creak, every scent, and every shadow was a clue in a grand, unfolding narrative. The cabin, with its weathered beauty and haunting quiet, was more than a mere shelter. It was a repository of emotions, memories, and perhaps even the key to unlocking her own destiny. In that profound stillness, as she stood amidst the silent echoes of a bygone era, Emory couldn't help but feel that she was on the brink of discovering something monumental, a truth that had been patiently waiting in the depths of this forgotten place. The subtle interplay of sensory impressions, the lingering presence that she could almost touch, and the enigmatic marks that adorned the cabin, all conspired to create an atmosphere thick with promise. Here, in the hushed embrace of the past, she was ready to confront the mysteries that had haunted her family for generations, and to step into a destiny that was as wild and unpredictable as the forest itself. Stepping outside into the cool embrace of the forest, Emory felt the stark contrast between the wild, untamed woods and the regimented pulse of the city she had left behind. The urban hum, its constant buzz of traffic and neon chatter, was replaced by the organic symphony of rustling leaves, creaking branches, and the distant murmur of a stream. Here, in the heart of nature, every breath of wind carried a hint of ancient secrets, and every shaft of sunlight filtered through the canopy like a whispered promise of destiny. As she wandered along a narrow dirt path that wound between towering pines and gnarled oaks, the rugged terrain underfoot seemed to echo the raw elemental energy of the forest. The ground was soft and uneven, sprinkled with pine needles and the occasional broken twig. The air was cool and invigorating, tinged with the earthy scent of damp moss and loamy soil. Emory's heart, still racing from the mysteries of the cabin, began to settle into a rhythm that matched the natural cadence around her. It was then that she noticed a figure working quietly at the edge of a small clearing. A solitary man, his strong arms rhythmically swinging an axe as he split a log with deliberate precision. He stood there like a statue of rustic strength, silhouetted against the deep green backdrop. The man's dark hair, slightly unkempt, framed a face that was at once rugged and intriguing. There was a spark in his eyes, a flash of intensity that hinted at stories untold, and battles fought in silence. Emory paused, her curiosity piqued. She had never been one to shy away from the unknown, and the enigmatic woodsman stirred something inside her, a blend of wariness and unexpected amusement. With a measured step, she approached, her presence unnoticed at first, as if the forest itself had absorbed her quiet arrival. Splitting wood or splitting hearts? She quipped lightly, unable to resist a remark that mixed dry wit with the natural tension of the moment. The woodsman paused, his axe suspended mid-swing. He glanced up, his gaze meeting hers with a mixture of surprise and a subtle, knowing smile that hinted at mischief. "Depends on the day," he replied, his voice low and smooth, carrying the gravelly cadence of countless whispered legends. For a moment, the forest held its breath, the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird, the only sound punctuating the silence between them. There was an unspoken understanding, a cryptic exchange of glances, that spoke of fate and coincidences too strange to dismiss. Emory stepped closer, her eyes tracing the lines of his weathered face, noting the quiet determination in every feature. "I'm Emory," she said, extending a hand in a gesture that was both tentative and defiant, a declaration of her willingness to engage with this mysterious stranger on his own rugged terms. He offered his hand, calloused and strong, in return. "Kieran," he introduced himself simply, as though his name held its own weight in the language of the wild. "And you're not from around here, are you?" His tone was teasing, yet edged with a seriousness that suggested he could read much more into her presence than she let on. The interplay of humor and foreboding in their brief dialogue sent a shiver of anticipation through Emory. The woods around them seemed to lean in, as if eager to listen to the unfolding conversation. Kieran's eyes, glimmering like captured firelight, betrayed a depth of experience and a hint of destiny that resonated with the very pulse of the forest. His easy manner in handling the axe, the precision of his swing, and the way he seemed completely at home in this raw, uncharted territory painted a picture of a man who belonged to the land, an elemental force shaped by the ancient trees and rugged landscapes. As they walked together along the narrow trail, their conversation turned to the strange intersections of fate and nature. "The city has its comforts," Emory remarked dryly, "but it can't compete with the raw truth of a forest where every sound and shadow tells a story." Kieran nodded, his gaze drifting momentarily to the towering pines overhead, before, he responded, "Out here, you learn that silence is not emptiness. It's a canvas. Every rustle is a brushstroke, every gust of wind, a secret waiting to be revealed." Their words mingled with the ambient sounds of the wilderness, a harmonious blend of nature's cadence and human curiosity. There was an almost palpable tension in the air, a magnetic pull that suggested their meeting was no mere accident. The forest, with its timeless wisdom and veiled mysteries, seemed to affirm that they were both travelers on an intertwined path, drawn together by forces beyond their understanding. The subtle banter between them was punctuated by quiet moments of introspection. Emory's mind churned with questions. What did fate intend by bringing her to this secluded place? And who was Kieran, really? A simple woodsman, or something far more enigmatic? With each step, the forest whispered answers in a language older than words, leaving her with a sense of anticipation and a hunger for the secrets that lay hidden beneath the ancient canopy. In that rugged, elemental world, as the gap between the familiarity of the city and the wild mystery of nature dissolved. Emory found herself poised at the brink of discovery. The enigmatic figure beside her, with his unspoken hints of destiny, made her wonder if their meeting was a mere coincidence or the first act of a grander, unfolding narrative, one that would forever alter the course of her life. Inside the shadowed confines of the cabin, Emory felt the weight of history settle around her like a thick, familiar mist. Every step she took further into the dim interior seemed to echo with memories of a time long past. A time when her grandmother's wisdom and warnings were woven into the very fabric of this home. The silence was profound yet alive with the soft rustle of shifting air and the occasional creak of old wood, as if the cabin itself were whispering secrets to those who dared to listen. Drawn by an inexplicable pull, Emory found herself gravitating toward a secluded corner of the main room, where a battered, carved wooden box lay half concealed by a frayed, dusty rug. With cautious hands, she lifted the edge of the rug, revealing a series of delicate, almost imperceptible markings etched into the floorboards beneath. The symbols, swirling and intertwined like ancient script, radiated an energy that was both haunting and magnetic, a silent promise that this place guarded mysteries far beyond the realm of the ordinary. Her heart quickened as she carefully removed the box, the sound of its creaking hinges punctuating the stillness of the room. Inside, nestled among layers of yellowed paper and brittle cloth, lay several letters penned in the unmistakable, elegant hand of her grandmother. The paper crackled softly as Emory unfolded the top letter, her eyes scanning the meticulously written words. Each line resonated with a cryptic urgency, a message that carried both love and a dire warning. Emory, if you are reading these words, then fate has drawn you back to where you were always meant to be. Remember the legacy that binds us, and be wary of those who would seek to unravel what has been woven by destiny. The letters, fragile yet potent with meaning, spoke of a heritage steeped in mystery, a lineage marked by an otherworldly bond that defied time. As she read on, Emory's inner voice mingled with the tangible silence, questioning, what secret did my grandmother carry with her? What legacy do these words hide beneath their gentle cadence? The questions echoed softly within her, heightening her awareness of the room's every detail. Around her, the cabin seemed to come alive. The interplay of light and shadow shifted with a deliberate rhythm, and the once still air now carried the soft murmur of whispers, as if the walls themselves were exchanging guarded confidences. Outside, the wind had begun to pick up, its persistent hum weaving through the cracks and crevices, further stirring the aged timbers and rustling loose, papers scattered on a time-worn desk. Emory moved toward the desk, her steps measured and careful. Resting on its surface was an open tome, its pages yellowed and edges curled, a book that appeared to have been a repository of her grandmother's long-held secrets. There, among the faded ink and delicate sketches, was a recurring emblem, a wolf's head entwined with a crescent moon. The emblem glowed faintly in the sparse light, an ethereal reminder of the supernatural bond that seemed to pulse through her veins. It was a symbol that resonated with an inexplicable familiarity, as though it were a key to a door that she had long forgotten existed. In that quiet moment, as Emory's eyes traced the intricate lines of the emblem, a chill ran down her spine, a shiver that was both unsettling and strangely affirming. It was as if the very air around her had thickened, charged with an unseen presence that observed her every move. The soft creak of the floor, the distant whisper of the wind, and the subtle rustling of paper combined into a symphony of suspense. Each sound was a reminder that she was not alone, that beyond the veil of time and memory, something ancient and powerful watched, waiting to reveal itself. Her thoughts swirled like the dust motes dancing in the pale moonlight, merging with the mounting tension that filled the room. Is this the fate that has been written in the shadows of my lineage? Am I to follow in the footsteps of a legacy too vast to comprehend? The questions, though unspoken, carried the weight of generations. With each passing second, the symbols and the letters coalesced into a narrative of destiny, a narrative that promised both wonder and peril. The quiet intensity of the cabin was punctuated by a sudden, almost imperceptible sound, a soft tap, as though something delicate had shifted in the darkness. Emory paused, her breath catching in her throat, as her eyes darted to the source of the sound. For a moment, the room was enveloped in a silence so profound, it felt almost tangible. Then, as quickly as it had come, the sound faded, leaving behind a lingering sense of anticipation. In that charged pause, Emory felt a connection, a tether to the past, to her grandmother, and to the mystical forces that had long shaped her destiny. The letters, the emblem, and the subtle sounds all whispered a promise, that the secrets of this place were not meant to remain hidden, and that her journey had only just begun. Here, in the quiet sanctuary of the cabin, where every creak and shadow was laden with meaning, she was poised to step into a future defined by the interplay of fate and the supernatural, a future that beckoned with both hope and a foreboding certainty. The first light of dawn crept gently over the horizon, bathing the forest in a soft, golden glow that transformed every tree and leaf into a living painting. Emory sat on the creaking wooden porch of the cabin, her fingers stained with graphite as she carefully sketched in her worn journal. The cool morning air carried a hint of dew and pine, mingling with the lingering fragrance of the previous night. A mysterious cocktail of old wood, faded lavender, and something indefinably wild that still whispered of secrets and half-forgotten promises. In the quiet solitude of that new day, every detail seemed to pulse with a delicate intensity. The forest, still shrouded in the soft luminescence of early morning, appeared almost ethereal, a place where time slowed, and the past and present blurred into a tender, unspoken dialogue. Emory's gaze lingered on the way the golden light filtered through the branches, each ray a silent note in a symphony of nature, a subtle reminder of the fleeting beauty of every moment. As she sketched, her thoughts wandered back to the surreal encounters of the previous night, where the echoes of strange voices and shifting shadows had hinted at a destiny written in the language of the wild. Lost in the meditative rhythm of her drawing, Emory barely noticed the sound of soft footsteps on the gravel path until they drew closer, breaking the stillness with a quiet presence. Turning her head, she saw him, Kieran Bale, emerge from the dense embrace of the forest. His figure was bathed in the early light, and for a moment, he appeared almost like a mirage, both mysterious and achingly familiar. His eyes, deep and burning with an unspoken intensity, met hers with a gaze that held both curiosity and a hint of a knowing smile. There was an undeniable magnetic pull between them, as if fate had conspired to bring their paths together in this timeless moment. Kieran paused a few paces away, his rugged features softened by the gentle warmth of dawn. His dark hair was tousled in the cool breeze, and the lines of his face, carved by years spent in the wilderness, carried the weight of unspoken stories. "Good morning, Emory," he said, his voice a low, mellifluous murmur that seemed to resonate with the whispering wind. There was no pretense in his greeting, only the honest, unguarded tone of a man who belonged as much to the forest as he did to the present moment. Emory's heart fluttered, a mix of curiosity and a tentative apprehension, stirring within her. She closed her sketchbook slowly, the scratch of graphite on paper echoing softly in the stillness. "Good morning, Kieran," she replied, her voice gentle yet edged with an unspoken question. It was as if the morning itself held its breath, waiting for them to acknowledge the delicate interplay of fate and desire that had woven its way into their lives. The air between them was charged, not with the clamor of overt passion, but with a quiet intensity, a silent conversation of glances and soft smiles that spoke of mysteries shared and secrets yet to be unveiled. For a few moments, they simply stood there, letting the beauty of the dawn fill the space between them. The golden light seemed to paint them in hues of possibility, each ray a promise of revelations yet to come. The forest, with its ancient trees and whispering winds, lent a sacred air to their encounter, as if nature itself had ordained that this meeting was more than mere chance. There was a softness to Kieran's expression now, a trace of vulnerability that belied his rugged exterior. It was a glimpse into a soul that had known both solitude and the fierce, consuming pull of destiny. Emory felt the weight of unasked questions and unspoken emotions hang in the air. "Last night was unexpected," she finally murmured, her eyes searching his for answers. The words were simple, yet laden with 1,000 layers of meaning, a cautious acknowledgement of a connection that defied easy explanation. Kieran's gaze held hers steadily, as if he were weighing her words against the backdrop of his own guarded secrets. "In the dark, the forest reveals truths that the daylight hides," Kieran replied softly, his tone both enigmatic and reassuring. His answer, though vague, resonated deeply within her, stirring memories of whispers and shadows that had danced around the edges of her dreams. There was something undeniably fated about their meeting, a subtle undercurrent of destiny that intertwined their lives like the delicate threads of a spider's web catching the morning dew. As the sun climbed higher, the mist slowly lifted, revealing more of the forest's hidden contours and lending clarity to the blurred edges of memory. Emory and Kieran continued to share quiet, tentative words, each sentence a small step into the unknown, each smile a spark of recognition in a shared mystery. In that luminous moment, the past and present converged, and the promise of a new beginning shimmered in the soft light of dawn. The tender interplay of emotions, the unspoken allure of fate, and the gentle magic of the morning melded together into an unforgettable encounter, one that promised that every moment held the possibility of something extraordinary, something destined to change their lives forever. The cabin's quiet was shattered by a tension that thickened the very air, a tension that heralded the moment when reality would fracture and reveal an impossible truth. Emory's heart pounded in her, chest like a relentless drum as Kieran's expression shifted from calm allure to something raw and unguarded. The gentle morning light that had once bathed their tentative smiles now seemed to pale before the surge of darkness that gathered in his eyes. It was as if the forest itself had exhaled, holding its breath for the revelation that was about to unfold. In a slow, deliberate motion, Kieran stepped closer, his features hardening as if chiseled from ancient stone. The cool breeze that had danced between them turned into a whisper of destiny, echoing around the quiet corners of the cabin. "Emory," he murmured, his voice trembling with a mixture of resolve and vulnerability. "There is something you must know, something that binds us beyond this mortal realm." Before she could muster a reply, his transformation began. A breathtaking, visceral display of nature's fury and beauty intertwined. His eyes, once a familiar, smoldering amber, ignited with an otherworldly glow, and his skin rippled with a strange, primal energy. The very air around him shimmered as coarse, dark fur sprouted along his arms and face, a metamorphosis both terrifying and mesmerizing. The subtle elegance of the man she had come to know dissolved into a creature of legend, a werewolf, the fabled embodiment of the wild's untamed spirit. Emory's breath hitched, her mind splintering between disbelief and a fierce, undeniable attraction that surged like an electric current. Every fiber of her being rebelled against the impossible sight, yet the magnetism of their fated bond tethered her to the moment. A clash of emotions erupted inside her, a storm of shock, fear, longing, and an overwhelming sense of destiny. The revelation was not just a supernatural truth. It was a seismic shift in her very existence, a call to embrace a reality that defied the confines of her old, predictable life. "Kieran," she whispered, her voice raw and unsteady, each syllable weighted with both terror and wonder. Fu, sound of her name, laced with vulnerability, broke the stillness like a fragile spell. In that suspended moment, the walls between what was known and the wild unknown crumbled, leaving only a visceral truth in its wake. He took another deliberate step forward, and with it, the beast within him seemed to wrestle with the remnants of his human soul. "Emory," he repeated, his voice now a guttural blend of man and beast, resonating like the roar of ancient forests. "I have carried this curse, this destiny, for longer than you can imagine. Our bond is written in the stars, etched into the very marrow of my bones. I am not just a man. I am the keeper of an ancient promise, the embodiment of the wild's eternal spirit." His words struck her like a thunderclap, reverberating through her mind and igniting a wildfire of conflicting emotions. Part of her recoiled in horror at the raw, animalistic power that radiated from him, while another part, inexplicably drawn to him, yearned to surrender to that very force. The intensity of his presence, the palpable energy of his transformation, sent shivers cascading down her spine. In that moment, the line between predator and protector blurred, and the depth of their fated connection became unbearably clear. As the beast's form solidified, so did the gravity of their intertwined destinies. Emory felt the collision of worlds, the mundane and the mystical, crashing within her, shaking her to her core. Her thoughts raced with questions that begged for answers. How can this be? What does it mean for us? The undeniable allure of his wild, unrestrained nature warred with the rational part of her mind, creating a tumultuous symphony of emotion. In the charged silence that followed, the cabin seemed to transform into a sanctuary of raw, unfiltered truth. Shadows danced across the walls as if echoing the tumult within her, and every creak of the old wood reverberated like a heartbeat, marking the passage of this pivotal moment. The supernatural bond that now linked them pulsed between them, an invisible thread drawing them inexorably closer, defying the conventions of the world they had known. Tears, unbidden and shimmering with a strange light, welled in Emory's eyes, not solely from fear, but from the overwhelming realization of a destiny that had been hidden in plain sight. Her inner turmoil found voice in a trembling, yet resolute exhalation. I feel it," she confessed softly, the words laden with both despair and hope. "I feel the pull of something ancient and powerful, something that calls to me, even as it terrifies me." Kieran's gaze softened, the fierce wildness in his eyes momentarily giving way to a tender vulnerability that belied the monster he had become. "We are bound by more than fate," he said, his voice a low, resonant whisper that vibrated with the weight of a centuries-old promise. "We are entwined by a power that defies explanation, a force that is both our curse and our salvation." In that haunting, electrified moment, the room became a crucible of transformation, a place where the mundane dissolved into myth, and where every heartbeat pulsed with the raw energy of destiny. The revelation of Kieran's true nature was not merely an unveiling of the supernatural. It was an invitation for Emory to step beyond the limitations of her former life and embrace the wild, unpredictable, and beautifully terrifying truth of who they were meant to be. As the night receded and the first light of dawn began to push back the shadows, Emory stood at the threshold of a new reality, a reality where destiny and desire, fear and fascination, clashed in a symphony of emotion. In that quiet, tumultuous space, she realized that to deny this bond was to deny the very essence of her being. And so, with her heart laid bare, and her spirit trembling on the edge of transformation, she allowed herself to be drawn into the fierce, unyielding embrace of a fate that was as inevitable as it was extraordinary. In the quiet aftermath of revelation, as dawn's gentle glow began to warm the lingering chill of night, Emory felt a magnetic pull that transcended the boundaries of fear and uncertainty. The echoes of Kieran's confession still resonated in her heart, a truth as wild as the forest and as ancient as the moon itself. In that moment, every doubt that had once held her back dissolved like mist in the early light, replaced by an irresistible call toward the unknown. With each step she took toward him, the forest around them seemed to fall into a hushed reverence. The soft rustle of leaves underfoot, the muted chirp of distant birds, and even the whisper of the morning breeze conspired to create a symphony of intimacy. Emory's heart pounded with a mixture of exhilaration and a calm determination, as if the very air were urging her to surrender to the passion that flickered at the edge of her consciousness. Kieran, still bearing the raw traces of his dual nature, stood waiting at the edge of a clearing where the golden light of the new day bathed him in a celestial glow. His eyes, deep and smoldering with unspoken emotion, followed her approach with an intensity that made the world around them seem to blur into insignificance. In that charged space between them, every glance, every subtle gesture, was imbued with a promise of transformation, a promise that the union of their souls could transcend even the harshest truths of their past. As Emory drew closer, the charged energy between them became almost palpable, a quiet, undeniable current that pulsed with every heartbeat. The air vibrated with the mingling of anticipation and relief, the release of emotions too long suppressed. Her breath caught in her throat as she reached out, not with trembling uncertainty, but with a confident longing that belied the chaos of her inner world. In that decisive moment, she chose to embrace the impossible connection that had haunted her every thought since the night's revelation. Their reunion was a slow, cinematic montage of moments strung together by raw passion and delicate vulnerability. Emory's eyes, shimmering with unshed tears of release, met Kieran's, and in that gaze, worlds collided. The distance between them evaporated until there was nothing but the warmth of their shared desire. Time itself seemed to hold its breath as she stepped into his arms, the space between them dissolving into an intimate closeness that felt as natural as the meeting of day and night. The first kiss came as a spark that ignited an inferno of emotion. It was not a kiss of mere affection, but one laden with the weight of destiny, a declaration of unity that was as tender as it was fierce. As their lips met, it felt like the culmination of every unspoken word and every moment of longing, a profound communion that bridged the gap between human frailty and the wild, untamed spirit within them both. The kiss was smooth and deliberate, unfolding with the grace of a well-rehearsed dance, yet charged with the spontaneity of a heart finally set free. In that kiss, Emory felt the transformation begin, a surge of energy that rippled through her, very core. It was as if the ancient bond, written in the language of fate and sealed by the wild heartbeat of the forest, had been ignited within her. Every touch, every subtle caress, carried the promise of renewal. The boundaries of her former self, the cautious, inhibited woman who had once clung to the safety of the known, melted away, replaced by a powerful sense of belonging. With each passing second, the intensity of their connection grew, wrapping around her like a warm, familiar blanket, dispelling the lingering chill of uncertainty. Kieran's hands, gentle yet commanding, traced the contours of her face and neck, as if memorizing every line and curve, etching their memory into his soul. His embrace was a paradox of strength and tenderness, a silent vow that no matter the storms that might arise, their bond would endure. The rhythmic pulse of their hearts seemed to merge into a single, unwavering beat, a steady reminder that destiny had led them to this singular, transformative moment. As the kiss deepened, Emory's thoughts became a quiet hum in the background, overtaken by the raw, sensual reality of now. Every sense was heightened, the subtle taste of him, the intoxicating warmth of his skin, the delicate scent of earth and wildness mingling with the lingering fragrance of lavender that still clung to her. The world around them receded into a soft, blurred canvas of golden hues, leaving only the clarity of their united souls in stark, breathtaking focus. In that intimate exchange, the forest bore witness to the birth of a love both fated and fierce, a love that defied the confines of logic and soared on the wings of destiny. The first sparks of passion had not only kindled a fire within them, but had also rewritten the narratives of their lives, merging two solitary paths into one vibrant, intertwined journey. As they slowly pulled apart, eyes still locked in a silent conversation, Emory knew that this was only the beginning, a beginning that promised to unravel mysteries, challenge fate, and ultimately redefine what it meant to truly love and be loved. In that radiant, ephemeral moment, the rise of their love became a beacon, a luminous force guiding them forward into a future where every heartbeat, every whispered word, and every shared touch would echo the profound truth of their indomitable bond. As dusk began its slow descent over the forest, the lingering warmth of the morning's passion was quickly tempered by a sudden shift in the atmosphere. The vibrant, golden hues that had bathed Emory and Kieran in their tender embrace gave way to deepening shadows, and the forest, once an ethereal canvas of light, transformed into a realm of foreboding mystery. The whispering wind, now laced with an icy edge, carried with it an unsettling promise, a hint that darkness was reclaiming its dominion. Emory stood at the threshold of the cabin, her heart still echoing the soft cadence of their earlier union. The remnants of that passionate encounter clung to her like a comforting yet fragile warmth, a beacon amid the encroaching gloom. Yet, as the light faded, a subtle, creeping doubt began to gnaw at the edges of her consciousness. The vivid memories of Kieran's fierce, unyielding gaze and the fire of their kiss clashed with the quiet, disquieting sounds that now punctuated the silence of the approaching night. The forest around her seemed to exhale a cold, misty breath. The once gentle rustling of leaves now transformed into a low, ominous murmur. Shadows stretched long and menacing, twisting around ancient trees as if they were reaching out to ensnare unsuspecting souls. The delicate interplay of light and dark that had painted the morning in soft, reassuring tones now rendered the world a chiaroscuro of beauty and peril, a breathtaking scene of nature's raw, unpredictable power. Inside her mind, Emory's emotions churned tumultuously. The memory of their tender embrace brought a momentary smile to her lips, a spark of hope that whispered of destiny fulfilled. But that hope was swiftly shadowed by the return of an all-too-familiar uncertainty. Questions began to swirl like autumn leaves caught in a sudden gust. Was the bond that had so fiercely united them enough to withstand the encroaching darkness? Could their love, as profound and consuming as it was, survive the impending storm that the night promised to bring? She recalled the way Kieran's eyes had blazed with an almost otherworldly intensity, a silent vow that their destinies were intertwined. Yet now, as the night deepened, those very eyes seemed to vanish into the darkness, leaving her with the stark reality that the safety of their shared passion was fragile, a candle flame flickering in a cold, unyielding wind. The soft murmur of the forest, which earlier had sung of renewal and promise, now carried a dissonant tone, a subtle, persistent reminder that danger was never far away. The ambiance of the forest was punctuated by sporadic, unsettling sounds. A distant snap of a twig underfoot, the echo of a low, mournful howl, and the rhythmic creaking of the cabin's aging timbers. Each sound was a harbinger, a delicate yet insistent warning that something was amiss. Emory's senses sharpened, and her internal conflict became all too palpable. A collision of the lingering beauty of their connection with the encroaching chill of uncertainty. Every rustle in the undergrowth, every shift of shadow, felt imbued with an intent that was as enigmatic as it was menacing. The juxtaposition of their earlier passion and the cold tension of the night was stark. The memory of Kieran's warm embrace and the taste of his kiss lingered on her skin, a tactile reminder of the undeniable bond they shared. And yet, as the forest grew darker and the night unfurled its cloak of foreboding around her, that warmth felt precarious, a delicate spark struggling against the overwhelming pull of impending conflict. In that moment, Emory felt the duality of her existence, the beauty of love intertwined with the inevitability of struggle. The night was not merely a backdrop for their union, but an active, sentient presence that could either nurture their fragile bond or devour it whole. Her heart, still buoyed by the memory of their connection, now pounded with an urgent, anxious rhythm, a silent plea for clarity amid the encroaching chaos. As she took a tentative step forward, the forest's ominous symphony grew louder, a chorus of unseen forces, each note resonating with the weight of ancient, unresolved tensions. The interplay of beauty and danger was now undeniable. The very air around her vibrated with a quiet intensity that promised both wonder and calamity. It was a moment suspended in time, where the past's tender intimacy and the present's stark uncertainty collided, leaving Emory to grapple with the inescapable truth that love and danger often danced a perilous duet. In the depths of that encroaching darkness, Emory realized that the fall was not simply a descent into night. It was a test of the strength of their bond, a challenge that would demand every ounce of courage, passion, and resolve. And as the forest closed in around her, she vowed to hold on to the memory of their passion, letting it be a guiding light, even as the shadows threatened to overwhelm her. The night was coming, and with it, the promise of a reckoning that would redefine everything she believed about love, destiny, and the price of following one's heart. Night had deepened into an unforgiving void as Emory found herself ripped from the fragile solace of the cabin. In an instant, her world had tilted into chaos, a maelstrom of snarling beasts and ruthless predatory intent. Before she could react, powerful arms seized her, dragging her away from the relative safety of the forest clearing. The air was thick with the tang of blood and fear. In the blink of an eye, she was thrust into a cavernous lair that reeked of menace and decay. The underground stronghold was a maze of damp stone corridors and flickering torches. Shadows stretched long and lean along the walls, animated by the erratic dance of firelight. Here, the normal rules of nature twisted into something dark and cruel. Emory's heart pounded in her ears as the reality of her capture settled in. She was no longer alone. This was a den of the werewolf mafia, a ruthless pack led by figures whose power was as brutal as it was absolute. Ruthless eyes glinted from the darkness as hulking silhouettes moved with predatory precision. Their snarls and guttural growls cut through the oppressive silence, each sound a promise of violence. Emory's mind raced. In mere moments, she had been stripped of her fragile hope and cast into a world where danger lurked behind every shadow. The air itself felt charged with menace. There was no escape. There was only the cold, hard reality of survival. Her limbs trembled, not from cold, but from the surge of adrenaline and the weight of her dire predicament. Every muscle in her body screamed for resistance. And so, amid the oppressive gloom and the howls that reverberated off stone, a fire ignited inside her, a desperate, defiant spark that refused to be extinguished. She was not going to be a pawn in their cruel game. A brutal force slammed her against the rough wall. The impact stole her breath, but it could not steal her resolve. Emory's eyes burned with a mix of fear and fierce determination as she assessed her surroundings. Chains and shackles, remnants of past captives, hung from the ceiling like grim trophies. The stench of sweat and iron filled her nostrils. Here, the rules were written in brutality and survival. A hulking figure stepped forward, his eyes cold and calculating. He spoke in clipped, dangerous tones, a leader among these merciless beasts. "You are mine now," he snarled, his voice echoing off the stone, leaving no doubt about his intentions. The words sent a chill down her spine, but instead of yielding, Emory's inner voice roared back with defiance. Her thoughts raced with a single, clear message: fight. Every fiber of her being responded with a primal determination to reclaim her destiny. In that dark, suffocating corridor, the battle lines were drawn. Fear was no longer an option. Survival demanded resistance, and resistance demanded courage. With trembling hands, she tested the bonds that confined her. The chains clinked ominously as she strained against them, her heart hammering with the urgency of her plight. A spark of hope ignited as she recalled the strength that had always resided within her, a strength whispered to her by her ancestors, embedded in her very blood. She was not just a captive. She was a fighter, destined to defy even the darkest of fates. Her eyes darted around, seeking anything: a loose stone, a shard of broken glass, a tool that could become her weapon. Every detail was magnified in the heightened intensity of her struggle. The harsh, flickering light revealed cracks in the ancient wall. The rough surface promised a glimmer of escape if only she could harness her raw, desperate energy. Her inner turmoil transformed into active resistance. She flexed her arms and tensed her legs, summoning the deep, unyielding will to survive. A surge of adrenaline bolstered her spirit, and in that moment, Emory decided that she would not cower. Instead, she would rise against her captors, each breath a rebellion against the oppressive darkness. A sudden clatter, a dropped tool, a surprised grunt, disrupted the eerie calm of the corridor. The werewolf leader's attention snapped to the sound, and for a heartbeat, the focus of the pack shifted. This was her opening. With a burst of determination, Emory twisted her body, forcing herself against the cold chains. The metal bit into her skin, a sharp reminder of the physical and emotional pain she had endured. But pain was a small price to pay for the chance at freedom. Her gaze flared with defiant brilliance as she vowed silently, "I will not be broken. I will fight for my destiny." In that charged moment, as the pack's snarls drew nearer, Emory's inner strength surged like a tidal wave. Every doubt, every shred of fear, was cast aside in the face of an unyielding resolve. The cold corridors of the lair echoed with the promise of impending conflict. The room, once a suffocating prison, became the stage for her transformation. From a frightened captive into a warrior forged in the crucible of desperation. And as the werewolf mafia closed in, their eyes glinting with ruthless intent, Emory knew that the fight for her destiny had just begun. Each heartbeat, each defiant breath, marked the rise of a fierce spirit that would not be subdued, a spirit ready to challenge fate itself, no matter how dark the night became. The air crackled with raw energy as the final battle erupted beneath a storm-dark sky. At the edge of the ancient stronghold, where twisted trees bore witness to centuries of secrets, Kieran stood poised like a living storm, a force of nature ready to unleash the fury of fate. His eyes blazed with a molten intensity, reflecting not only the fire of combat, but also the unbreakable bond with Emory that pulsed through his very veins. Today, destiny had drawn him into a confrontation that would decide the future of their entwined souls. Alpha Maddox, the merciless leader of the dark forces, emerged from the gloom with an aura of cold authority. His presence was both intimidating and methodical, a predator whose calculated cruelty cut through the chaos of the battlefield like a sharpened blade. With a snarl that resonated across the blood-stained ground, Maddox signaled his pack, and a horde of feral, snarling werewolves charged forward. Their movements were a blur of sinewy power and savage precision, each beast driven by a primal hunger to claim victory. Kieran lunged into the fray with explosive speed, his muscles coiled like a spring ready to release. Every step he took was a precise, choreographed dance of combat, his body weaving seamlessly between attack and defense. The clash of fangs against flesh and the ring of crashing bodies filled the air in a symphony of violence. With every strike, his determination surged. He fought not merely for survival, but for the promise of a future that belonged to him and Emory. A future where their mate bond would shatter the shackles of fate. Amid the tumult, Kieran's fury reached a fevered pitch as he confronted Maddox directly. Their eyes locked in a battle of wills. One pair, steeled with centuries of darkness and cruelty. The other, burning with the incandescent light of love and destiny. The ground beneath them trembled as they exchanged blows, a flurry of swift, relentless strikes that blurred the lines between man and beast. Each collision was a testament to the raw power that surged through Kieran's form, the force of his passion, and the echo of every heartbeat shared with Emory fueling his rage. Maddox's ferocious onslaught came in rapid, calculated bursts. His claws, honed to deadly precision, raked across Kieran's side, drawing crimson lines that marked the toll of the battle. Yet, with every wound, Kieran's resolve only hardened. The pain was a reminder of what was at stake. A future defined by the love that had ignited within him, and the promise of destiny they had dared to embrace. In the midst of the swirling melee, time seemed to slow, and each beat of Kieran's heart reverberated with the weight of every hope and fear, every whispered vow between him and Emory. Around them, the battle raged in a chaotic ballet of violence and determination. The snarls of Maddox's pack were punctuated by the clash of powerful limbs and the shattering of bone. Shadows danced wildly as flashes of movement cut through the dim, stormy light, a visual testament to the primal energy of the fight. The air was thick with the scent of blood, sweat, and the unmistakable tang of imminent destiny. Kieran fought, with the ferocity of a man possessed, his every movement imbued with the spirit of his mate bond. It was as if Emory's love had transformed him into an unstoppable force, a guardian of a sacred promise that defied the relentless cruelty of fate. With a mighty roar that shook the very heavens, he launched a decisive assault, his fists and claws working in perfect harmony to break through Maddox's defenses. Each strike was a declaration, a promise that he would never let the darkness win, that every scar, every drop of blood, was a testament to their unyielding bond. In that climactic moment, as the battle reached its zenith, the ground trembled, with the power of destiny colliding with survival. The fury of Kieran's assault met Maddox's cold, calculated malice, and the ensuing impact was like the crash of two titanic forces, a moment when time itself seemed to fracture under the strain. A final, resounding blow sent Maddox staggering, his eyes wide with disbelief as the unrelenting force of Kieran's passion and resolve pinned him against the ancient, crumbling stone. For a heartbeat, silence reigned, a profound stillness that spoke of both the end of a brutal conflict and the beginning of a new, uncharted chapter. In that suspended moment, every drop of sweat, every cry of pain, every pulse of determination converged into one unyielding truth. Destiny had chosen its champions. Kieran, bleeding yet unbowed, stood as a beacon of defiant hope amid the ruins of the battlefield, his mate Bond a palpable, incandescent force that could not be extinguished. Then, with a final resounding cry that echoed into the stormy night, Kieran delivered the decisive strike. Maddox fell, his reign of terror brought to a crashing halt by the raw, indomitable spirit of love and survival. The enemy forces, witnessing their leader's downfall, hesitated and then retreated into the enveloping darkness. In that moment of hard-won victory, the tumultuous roar of the battle gave way to an almost reverent silence, a fragile peace forged in the crucible of fierce combat and emotional catharsis. As Kieran's gaze swept over the battlefield, every scar, every mark of blood and sweat bore witness to the colossal clash of destiny and desire. The final battle was over, yet its echoes would forever resound in the hearts of those who had dared to fight for a love that defied the very essence of darkness. In the quiet that followed the chaos, the battlefield lay bathed in a somber twilight, a stark reminder that victory often comes at an unyielding cost. The air, heavy with the scent of blood and charred wood, held a bittersweet calm as the remnants of the enemy scattered into the dark corners of the forest. Kieran and Emory stood amidst the ruins of the confrontation, their eyes meeting in a shared silence that spoke volumes of the toll the battle had exacted on both body and soul. Kieran's armor was battered, his skin marked with deep gashes and scars that told the story of a relentless struggle. Yet, it was the look in his eyes, a mix of triumph, sorrow, and unspoken resolve, that revealed the true cost of their hard-won freedom. Every breath he took was a testament to the fierce, raw energy of the fight, and every bruise was etched into his memory like a grim reminder of the price of defiance. Emory, too, bore the physical traces of the battle. A delicate cut along her forearm, and the ache in her muscles that resonated with the intensity of every blow exchanged. But the deeper wounds were those carved into her heart, the lingering ache of loss, of the fleeting moments of terror and doubt that had threatened to shatter her spirit. Together, they surveyed the desolate expanse, where the remnants of the enemy lay strewn about like discarded relics of a nightmare. The once proud forces of Alpha Maddox were now broken, their sinister presence reduced to scattered shadows and fading echoes. In this silence, the forest itself seemed to breathe a quiet sigh, a testament to the upheaval that had rocked its ancient heart. The bittersweet taste of victory was palpable, mingling with the sorrow of the lives forever altered by the night's events. In the aftermath, time itself seemed to slow. The fierce clamor of combat was replaced by a reflective stillness, punctuated only by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant murmur of a stream reclaiming its flow. Emory's eyes wandered across the scene, lingering on the jagged marks left by the struggle, the shattered fragments of weapons, the deep gouges in the stone, and the scattered vestiges of a conflict that had been as personal as it was cataclysmic. Each detail was a vivid reminder that even as darkness had been vanquished, its scars would remain etched in the landscape of their lives. Amid the quiet ruin, a new reality began to take shape, a future defined by the echoes of their fated bond. Kieran's steady presence beside her was a silent promise that they would face what lay ahead together. Their connection, forged in the crucible of battle, pulsed with a resolute warmth that contrasted sharply with the chill that still lingered in the air. In that moment of introspection, Emory felt both the weight of their recent trials and the faint glimmer of hope that hinted at a brighter, if uncertain, dawn. They moved slowly through the remnants of the battlefield, each step deliberate, as if treading on the memories of every fallen enemy and every sacrifice made. Kieran's strong hand found hers, and in that simple, unspoken gesture lay the reassurance of a shared destiny. The scars they bore were not just marks of pain, but symbols of resilience, emblems of a bond that had withstood the fiercest storm. With every heartbeat, their connection grew, intertwining their fates with the quiet power of mutual understanding and unyielding commitment. The calm that followed was not the absence of conflict, but a poignant interlude, a time to gather strength before the inevitable challenges that the future would bring. Emory's mind buzzed with quiet questions. What would they face next? How would they rebuild amidst the ruins of a world that had nearly devoured them? Yet for the first time, these uncertainties were met not with paralyzing fear, but with the steady resolve of a love that had been both tested and tempered in the fires of adversity. In the reflective silence of the aftermath, the landscape transformed into a canvas for new beginnings. The wounded earth and splintered remnants of battle told a story of loss and rebirth, echoing the dual nature of their journey, a journey where every sorrow carried the seed of hope, and every scar was a silent testament to the strength of their spirit. Emory and Kieran, side by side, embraced the fragility and beauty of their shared destiny, knowing that the battle might have ended, but the war for their future was only just beginning. As twilight deepened and the first stars emerged, in the cool night sky, they made a silent vow to rebuild, to honor the sacrifices made, and to stand united against the uncertainties of tomorrow. In that sacred pause between the end of conflict and the dawn of a new era, their hearts beat in unison, a steady, resolute rhythm that would carry them through whatever trials lay ahead. Their bond, faded and fierce, shone like a beacon in the darkness, lighting the way toward a future where love, even in its most hard-won form, could conquer the remnants of a shattered past. The first light of dawn broke gently over the wilderness, transforming the landscape into a serene tapestry of soft golden hues. In this quiet morning, the forest, once a realm of uncertainty and foreboding, now shimmered with the promise of a new destiny. Emory and Kieran stood together on a small rise overlooking a valley bathed in gentle light, the remnants of nights. Chaos were slowly giving way to a palpable calm, as if the earth itself was exhaling a sigh of relief and renewal. In that stillness, every detail of nature seemed to speak of a journey well traveled. The dew on the ferns sparkled like tiny jewels, and the rustling of the leaves created a soothing melody that resonated deep within their hearts. It was a morning that bore witness to transformation, not merely of the land, but of two souls that had been forged in the fires of destiny. Together, they had moved from the depths of rejection and despair into the powerful embrace of fate and love. And now, in the soft glow of dawn, they welcomed a future that was as mysterious as it was hopeful. Emory's eyes, still glistening with the echoes of past trials, met Kieran's with a silent understanding that transcended words. Their journey had been arduous, marked by the fierce battles of the night and the scars of hard-won victories. Yet here, in the tender light of morning, those hardships had become the very stepping stones to their rebirth. The wilderness around them, once a silent witness to their pain and struggle, now blossomed into a symbol of their united destiny, a living canvas painted with the colors of resilience and enduring promise. As they walked hand in hand along a narrow trail winding through towering trees, the soft murmur of the forest and the gentle chirping of early birds filled the air with a sense of calm and continuity. The earth beneath their feet, still rich with the remnants of yesterday's battles, had become fertile ground for the seeds of tomorrow. Each step they took together was a reaffirmation of their shared commitment, a commitment to rebuild, to cherish the delicate balance between love and the supernatural forces that had once sought to tear them apart. In quiet moments, they paused to reflect on the incredible transformation they had undergone. Emory recalled the time when the darkness of rejection had nearly consumed her, when every shadow had whispered doubt, and every cold night had seemed endless. Now, the light of this new dawn carried away those ghosts, replacing them with hope, warmth, and the unwavering conviction that their bond was meant to endure. Kieran, too, felt the weight of the past melt away in the gentle embrace of the morning, his fierce eyes softening into a look of tender assurance, a promise that no matter what challenges lay ahead, they would face them as one. The forest, with its ancient trees and meandering streams, served as a constant reminder of nature's eternal cycle of renewal. It was as if every living element around them had been waiting for this moment, a moment where the pain of the past transformed into the promise of a future replete with possibility. In the dappled sunlight, the couple could see the subtle interplay of hope and mystery. Each ray of light was a delicate whisper of fate, urging them to move forward with confidence and joy. And so, as the sun ascended higher in the sky, casting long, comforting shadows and filling the air with the promise of a bright day, Emory and Kieran embraced their new reality. Their love, a force that had once been as wild and unpredictable as the very nature that surrounded them, now shone with a steady, reassuring brilliance. It was a love that had defied the supernatural, that had triumphed over darkness, and that promised to continue to illuminate even the most shadowed corners of the world. In that tender, transformative moment, as the wilderness blossomed into a living testament of their united destiny, they took a deep breath together, a quiet vow to cherish every moment and to remain steadfast, no matter what the future might hold. Their journey, marked by struggle, passion, and the ultimate triumph of love, was far from over. With the dawn as their silent witness and the promise of a new day guiding them, they stepped forward into the light, ready to write the next chapter of their epic tale, a chapter filled with hope, mystery, and the enduring promise of destiny yet to be fulfilled.